Nau mai haere mai, and welcome to this Kāpiti Coast District Council meeting of 8th of December 2022. So we'll start with the council blessing. Councillor Hanford.
Ia mātou e whiriwhiri ana i ngā take kei mua i o mātou aro. E pono ana mātou ka kaha tonu ki te whakapau mahara huapai mo ngā hāpori I mahi nei mātou. Me kaha hoki mātou katoa kia whaihua kia tōtika tā mātou mahi, a mā te maia te tiro whakamua me te hihiri kataia te arahi I roto I te kotahitanga me te aroha.
Kia ora, Councillor Hanford. I'd like to welcome today all our elected members, both councillors and community board chairs. We now have all our community board chairs confirmed for this triennium. Congratulations to those of you who've been elected to those positions. Welcome to our Chief Executive Darren Edwards, council staff, and our very able Democracy Services who'll be running this meeting today. We've got a very interesting lineup of public speakers today. Really looking forward to that. So, item 3, apologies. Do I have any apologies for the meeting today? We have a full attendance by the looks of it. Do I have any declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda? Councillor Hanford.
Just to note that I'm a trustee on the board of Kāpiti Youth Support, so have a conflict of interest relating to item 11.3 on our agenda.
Thank you. Any further conflicts of interest? Community Board Chair, Mr. Mansell.
Just to note that I'm a director of Sheffield or Alpha Corporation, which is referred to in the presentation from Wellington, so I'll be sitting back from the table for that.
Thank you. We have a photographer in the room today. Could I please confirm that the photographer is to take pictures only of public speakers from whom permission has been obtained? Thank you. Are you employed by the council? Okay, so I confirmed with Mr. Wong that there was to be only pictures of public speakers where the permission of the public speaker had been obtained. Thank you. I'll move on now.
So what are you saying? I can't take photos?
You can take photos of the public speakers where you've obtained the permission of the person. I haven't gone around the councillors and got permission.
First time I've ever been refused photos in a council meeting.
Okay, well maybe we'll do it this way. So feel free to take the photos, but please get permission from the elected members afterwards. That would be great. Thank you. We're going to move.
That would be easier. Has anyone heard a check?
Is everybody okay with photos?
As long as it's back.
Okay, that's fine then. Thank you. Thank you. That's fine. Sorry, it's a new triennium, and to be honest, we've never had a photographer coming in and taking photos before, so I just wanted to make sure that was okay with our elected members. Thank you very much. I know. Okay, so moving on. We have nothing for item 5, nothing for item 6. So we move on to item 7, public speaking time. First up, we have Marco Zayman for Whale Song, relating to item 11.7, the notice of motion regarding whale song support. So this morning we have a number of organisations who've come, and I'll be treating them more as a deputation, so we won't have the usual 3 minutes for the organisations. We'll be allowing extra time for them to present their presentations this morning. So, Marco.
Ngā mihi nui, greetings to all. And the first person to mention my surname in the proper way it should be pronounced is Zayman, so that's very interesting, Janet. Very well. Thank you for letting us be here today. I'd like to quickly introduce our kapa to the new council, should you have any questions for them in the next few minutes. I've got Mike Fuller, the artist, Tākari Kotaro, Pukitapu Kei Paraparamu Trust, Barry Cleaveley from Alpha Corporation and Coastlands, Fern Campbell, our 3D specialist that helped us get the big whales printed that are at the airport and in the mall, Catherine Webb, one of our technical advisors, Steve LaHood, storyteller extraordinaire from Story Inc., who has had a hand in some of the biggest exhibitions around the world. So he's very important to our team for storytelling in the future. So very, very cool to have our team standing behind me and any other supporters that might be here. After the last few years of funding applications, it's become very clear in government directives to me that communities and business and councils need to collaborate and present unified plans to generally succeed. To make Whale Song a reality, we ask that we all work as a collaborative, unified team to achieve funding goals, or it will never happen. On that note, I just would like to put a little question to the council. Are they planning on approaching the Tourism Innovation Fund in any other way other than Whale Song? That's just a question that could be answered later. I note with the limits on this fund, it will likely not accept multiple applications from one region or one district, as I've been told. Should Council agree to formally support Whale Song, I also ask that you are advocates of Whale Song when in discussions with government ministers, and that Whale Song be formally adopted into KCDC's Economic Development and Tourism Destination Plans as a key project for Kāpiti. Potentially the largest tourism attraction in the district, the benefits are many and widespread. With reference to our memorandum for today's meeting, I'm not going to talk too long, by the way, taken as read, are there any questions from councillors or council officers?
Any questions for Mr. Zayman? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks for that, Marco. Are you anticipating at any stage requiring funding from council?
No, we've always said from day one that it's a very clear statement on our website and all our documents that no ratepayer funding will be needed to build the whales. Notwithstanding that, if we do go into partnership with council on this exciting project, we would like to be able to utilise some of council's resources, technical teams and the economic team to help us build our case for this fund, because it's not a big fund, but it's one is pretty much aimed at what we're trying to pull off here, innovative tourism, yeah, we're going to need some help, but no funding.
So, and just the follow-up question to that is the value of the moral support from council. So, if council was to endorse this project, how valuable do you think that would be in terms of you being able to get funding?
We were very close to getting the infrastructure fund grant that we applied for $5 million. We were instructed by council to go it alone because council was also applying to that fund, which we did, and I got a call from MB to say that we'd been declined because we didn't have a territorial partner. Our application was an exemplar otherwise. So that was for $5 million, and it wasn't for the whales. And we haven't actually applied for any of the large grants for the whales yet. This is the first one. We firmly believe that the ground needed work first. So that grant for $5 million was for the restoration and works on the stream to enable us to at least work on our piece of land that we hold tenure over. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thanks for coming today, Marco. I just had a couple of questions. I see in your documents that you're intending to have a multifaceted cultural centre as part of the
Wharemoku plan.
Wharemoku plan.
Yep.
So it seems to be this is bigger than just Wales.
Yeah.
So just on the question is, the council currently are struggling with the Te Urahi project and looking at things that may come if that gets cancelled in terms of achieving the values and aspirations of cultural diversity and telling our story. Is this project capable of achieving some of what the Gateway is aspiring to?
Yes, I believe so. Now, there's two aspects to this project, and the reason that we've come up with the Wharemoku plan was because when we look at a $12 million investment of a sculpture, we need to know what's going on around it. The last thing we want is a 6-storey building with its back turned to the stream. We've had enough of people turning their back to the stream. So water and whales are obviously linked. So what we've been trying to achieve is that we work together on a vision to make sure we end up with a park around the whales. The funding we're looking for separate for that is just for the whales. So whatever else happens, including the cultural centre, which is essentially on coastland square land, working with the local iwis, and producing a cultural centre that's within the civic centre, so next to this building. I mean, this place where you can have your citizenships and all these things that could go with that. So I think the connectivity between a cultural centre for our district needs to be very close to this building, and it needs to be very close to the transport hub, because people want to access it. And one of the big things for me is there's nowhere in Wellington that we can actually learn the Kāpiti or the Wellington story. I mean, I've said it before, you go into Te Papa, there's a marae there from up north that they want back. There's nothing about Wellington's history or the fact that the first export out of New Zealand came from Kāpiti, and it was whale oil. So we were the beginning of commerce here. We had the biggest airport here. So there's all these stories that we could be telling, and there is nowhere that they're really being told which incorporates the iwi story as well. And that's really important because there's a lot gone on over the years, and a lot of us don't understand what's happened in the sense of the iwi story, and compassion will come out of understanding. And understanding will also then bring a joining together and a community that becomes joined. So it's all part of the picture, but if the Wharemoku Park is potentially a distraction from whale song, my focus is obviously getting whale song up, but I'd like to think that the wider council and the wider community are really keen to see something go on that looks good around those whales. So.
Great, thank you. Just another question. Just in relation to visitation of similar exhibits around the place,
yeah.
What sort of visitation in your project planning would you expect to, what are these whales actually going to draw in?
They're going to make every child drag every parent along to go and see them. So how many people have we got in New Zealand? I would say by the end of 5 years, we would have had a large proportion of New Zealand going to see these whales, but I may be wrong. But we have 5 million going through the mall every year. That's a significant number. Of that, 90% of them have gone through the whale song display in the mall. Whales are in the top 5 attractions globally, and they're the thing that really grabs people's attention. They're the Kāmatua of our seas, the matriarchs of our world. So, yeah, I think we're talking 250,000 minimum out of Coastlands figures. If we got 10% of Coastlands numbers, that would be 500,000 visitors, which puts us above the zoo. The zoo's currently 250,000 visitors a year, and you have to pay to get in there. The whales will be free. So the people who come here from afar with their art tourism money, because that's what the art tourist is a high-paying tourist, will be able to spend all their money on other attractions and food and beverage, etc., while they're here. The whales will not cost them anything, but it will draw them in, believe me.
One last question, if I may. Are you actually in the tourism destination plan?
We tried.
Have you been supported by the Kotahitanga Economic Board?
Richard and I presented to the board quite a while ago, and the belief was that we would be assisted on our journey, and we did not appear in the management plan. We're not also in any tourism advisory plans either, so I attended that meeting last night and sort of passed on that we'd actually been working very hard to get into these plans, but to date we've been held off, which has been disappointing, which has got me to this point today really, where we either move forward or we stop.
Great, thank you for your time. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillor Warwick.
Morning.
Morning.
I'm just wondering about ongoing costs and maintenance beyond the building of the whales. Will there still be a trust that does that, or will you hand it back to the council because this is could be a problem in the future for funding?
Well, I think if you look at the lifespan of bronzes, and Sir Richard Taylor would back me on this, and if you feel like needing to talk to him about this directly, I can arrange that for you. Richard is one of my key consultants on the project, and he's overseeing the build. Bronzes last up to 5,000 years. The bronzes in Wellington have just needed a clean. And we won't be going up 24 metres in the sky to give these ones a bit of a clean very often. But I think the maintenance level on these will be minimal. It's more the maintenance around the park and the infrastructure for all the people to enjoy the spaces. And that was sort of part of the funding that we applied for previously, was to start building that infrastructure for the park and also for the whale site. So I think ongoing costs will be minimal. As to who owns it, I think I believe this is a project for Kāpiti entirely, and we have to partner on this, so we can work through those things. I mean, we've got Alpha Corporation and Coastlands fully behind the project, and we just need to get this side of the road happening. So I think low maintenance, very low maintenance, but we have reserves contributions coming in every day for developments around the coast, and what's that money for? You know, the reserves contributions are there to support the parks and build open spaces and maintenance of those open spaces. So, you know, there's a lot of development going on, so there must be a lot of reserves contributions coming in.
Thank you. Councillor Cofford.
Oh, congratulations, Marco. I think it's a wonderful project. Anything to do with reinforcing the Wharimauku development is great, and I really loved your term, turning your back on intensification. It's a great, we've had great success with Friends of the River at Old Taki and Waikanai, and I think Wharimauku is the place, and if the council can help in any way, you've got our full support. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't hear a question in there, but we'll move on. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Marco. I have 4 questions, but the first one, I just want clarity. If KCD is not a partner or a collaborator in this kaupapa, where do you see this project going?
Ending.
That's pretty straightforward. Another question, what do you think after 5 years official support has not been forthcoming, or have you been under the impression that it was?
I was under the impression under Guru, but it never came to be. So, you know, we suddenly walked into carbon footprint problems, which he raised. And interestingly enough, the foundry and where we're planning on building these whales is that the city that they're in is one of the leading cities in China going into sustainable power generation. They are moving away quickly from coal, and China's actually leading the world on this, I understand. So, yeah. And of course, when something lasts up to 5,000 years, let's just say 500 years, the carbon footprint over that period is zilch.
Through Madam Chair, I have a couple of questions for some of the people that are part of the group. Is that allowed?
Yeah, sure. If you've got any support people,
Relatively quick.
do you want to say who you'd like to address the questions to, so they can
first
come
one
up to the
is
microphone?
Takari.
Takari, are you happy? Are you happy with that, Takari? Is that okay? Sure.
Ngā mihi koutou.
Kia ora. Good morning, Takari. The question I have for you is basically, how has this project impacted on the mana of Puketapu Hapu?
Actually, it's for Puketapu Hapu, which is undergoing a transformation really, and coming into another season of being involved in the community in an open way. The whale song project called Puketapu Hapu, you know, there was the first acknowledgement of the hapu that has Mana Whenua over Paraparamu whenua, and that did good for our heart. And our first concern was the Wharimauku stream, of course, and which is our awa, and we're awfully proud of it. It goes all the way to, you know, Te Wai o Rongomai, the dust of the comet o Rongomai, and that's our beach, and then we've got our hills. So to have that acknowledgement, and then to find our partner for over 50 years in the lands that the mall is built on, and a lot of public works act taking for civic purposes is from Puketapu Hapu. We just saw an opportunity to join forces and look after our stream, but also make our presence appear in and we weren't sure what it was, but we knew it was more than a wharenui for our whānau. It was a centre to tell our story, because it's a pervasive story going Taranaki down, but all the waka came here, and we were able to focus our mahi at the moment because of the airport. and the situations we find ourselves having to respond to. So the cultural centre in itself was a hope that sprung in the hearts of the hapu to actually have a whare. We had 9 pass sites here in Paraparaumu when we came here and settled and stayed. So to have a group that we've already have relationships with, like Coastlands and now the Whale Song, it was like a call. And my son actually, he, as part of our getting the hapu back together again, he was inspired by a kōrero from Kaumātua, but also from our former mayor, Guru, about a cultural centre where all of our community can participate from Te Ao Māori view. And I don't see that it's competition for Te Uruhi, and the name comes from our hapu, Te Uruhi. It's not, it's a different function, and the function is to be proud and to look after our community. And I see the park as our way of providing manaaki to all our visitors and to our whānau to look after and to breathe. So our land can breathe, and our Paraparaumu is
Very exciting.
is our focus. You know, kia ora.
Thank you very much, Takiri. Much
Thank you,
appreciated.
Takiri.
I have a question for Steve LaHood, if that's possible.
Steve?
Mr. LaHood, come up to the
Mr.
microphone.
LaHood. Mr. LaHood, you're very well recognised around the world with regards to the exhibitions you're involved in and how you've represented this country overseas in many exhibitions. In your view, how do you see this project stacking up with regards to what you've been involved in?
Okay, that's a huge question. Usually my clients, whether they're the city of Hanoi or Shanghai or those kinds of things, have a vision for their future. They know how large their cities are going to grow. They've got expectations. They want to make places which are functional in their culture, and they're looking for a central place, a place which is recognisable, that says to everybody, oh, that's Paraparaumu, that's Hanoi, represented by this space, that's used by its inhabitants, it's used by its visitors, it's a welcoming place, it's striking, original, all of those things. So everybody is looking for the unique factor that describes the place. And it seems to me that this Wharimauku proposal finally says on the Kāpiti coast that this is the centre of the Kāpiti coast. This is where you find the hub. And if we don't move on it now and claim that piece of land, which is so central to everything that's happening here between the rail and the expressway, then what have we got? We've got an ex-State Highway 1, a large block of shops, a big empty piece of land, a freeway, an airport, a beach. It doesn't combine to make anything. So this is an opportunity to think ahead, to create the centre of Paraparaumu, as far as I can see. I don't agree with everything that's in the plan at the moment. I think we've got a lot of talking and thinking and designing to do. I particularly love the concept of bringing the traditional iwi Mana Whenua story into the middle of it all, but that too has to be talked about, yes, very intensely. The design can't come from Pākehā and be deposited on Māori. It has to come together. So I think we've got a lot of work to do, but I think it's a really good place to start.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Barry, if I can perhaps just have a word from you as well. Obviously, your involvement with Coastlands.
Sorry, could you introduce yourself properly? Surname, please.
Cleveley, Barry Cleveley. I didn't expect to speak, but I'm very pleased to. I'm not sure whether you asked me a question.
Oh, look, it wasn't so much of a question. Your involvement with both Coastlands Alpha Corporation, I mean, how important do you see this project with regards to your visions moving forward?
Well, I can truthfully say, since we first got involved, which was about 5 years ago, as it's developed, I haven't been able to really come across one negative thing for the whole community. I've tried hard because you try and anticipate what's going to be a negative question. It seems to me that this is a unique opportunity for one particular reason. At the moment, we've got open land with no buildings. Usually when you want to create something, they've got buildings on, you've got to knock them over, that's a cost, and you've got people defending their patch. You've got a situation here where all the stakeholders are really in favour of it. So that's a huge thing. And we've got a guy here, when he first came to see us, he'd done something, he'd sunk the frigate. So many people come to see us and talk to us about dreams, and they're just yakking. But he'd actually done something. And then we saw this Mike Fuller's design, and who doesn't like it? In fact, I've never heard anybody say they don't like it. So you've got the ingredients of something that's really, really achievable, except for one thing. And I don't mean to be rude, but the thing that's been missing is the backing of council. The written backing of council. We would have had money if we'd had a signature.
Thank you very much, Barry. Much appreciated.
Okay.
Well, here's hoping we can help with that
That's the end of my
today
questioning.
and into the future. Is that the end of your questions?
That's the end of my
Councillor?
questioning, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. Marco, do you have any? We've got one question from Councillor Hanford.
Go on then, hit me with it.
Kia ora Marco, and to the rest of the team as well. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou for coming along and also for all the mahi that's led us to this point. Just a question in regards to the kind of emissions component of the thing, and you've already kind of alluded to that today and maybe the challenges in that kōrero. I'm just wondering, and keen for you to talk briefly about your commitment to working alongside kind of experts and people who might be able to support in ensuring that emissions from the project are absolutely as low as possible and then kind of offset in some particular way. Is there a commitment kind of generally in the project to ensure that happens and that you're working alongside the right people?
From me down to Sir Richard Taylor, yes, I think that's got to be part of everything today.
Awesome.
I sell native plants by the thousands, and I really feel good about that, and I want to feel good about whale song.
Awesome.
I think the big thing for me too, having been at the Marine Education Centre for a number of years running that with Victor and Judy, that the interference we give whales in the ocean by visiting them all the time and driving around them in speedboats. Not so bad with Kaikoura because they run under pretty strict rules, but globally it hasn't been a good thing to interact with whales in their own environment. This is going to stop those boats having to go out. You don't see 7 whales normally on a whale trip, let alone the whole body of them. You normally see a bit of a tail or the top fin, and there's nothing else, and that's it. Or you see a dead one on the beach, and that's not much good anyway. So, yeah, I think we've got to follow that line for sure.
Just good to hear there's that commitment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an important question. Thank you, Councillor Hanford. Any brief closing remarks?
No, I just want to ask the 2 questions of the memorandum. Does Council support establishing a formal partnership with the Whale Song Trust? And does Council support partnering with the Wharimaka Working Group on the vision of a park? That's all it is, by the way. It's only ever been a vision of the park. And then if we do get that support, could Council please make a public statement about that?
Thank you. Those questions will be answered later in the agenda. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
I know we've taken quite a bit of time over that, and my apologies to other public speakers who are waiting, but that is the first opportunity that Mr. Zayman's been able to get in front of the council to have a kōrero with us, and I think it's been really good to have that kōrero on record. I think there are some statements there that will be very useful support statements for your applications going forward. So all the best, and we'll come to this later in the agenda.
Just one thing, if we do get the support, we're obviously not asking money, but I do want to emphasise the help that we need to get this application in. We've had quotes in the vicinity of $60,000 to $150,000 with technical advisors helping us for this grant. It's an awful lot of money for a charitable trust to have to put away. outside the project, but it's part of the process. So whatever you guys can help us with in that respect would be muchly appreciated.
Yeah, we've got an annual plan coming up, so let's have that conversation. Thank you. Next I have Richard Young, who's a public speaker, coming to speak about Whale Song and Make It 16. Welcome, Mr. Young.
And yes, I know I'm ugly, but if you want to take it, you're very welcome to. Tēnā koutou katoa ko, Richard Young, aho, Your Worship, Councillors, Mana Whenua and all. I'll keep this brief re Whale Song. Look, far better whales down a river than a white elephant on a beach. The Whale Song website clearly says in red, no taxpayer funding will be used. Part C of the motion as proposed by Councillor Halliday actually says it wouldn't preclude, i.e. it would enable KCDC to contribute financially. This is obviously at odds with Whale Song's statement so far. So therefore, my comment is you may just want to review or revise Part C of Councillor Halliday's motion. Second item, Councillor Hanford's motion for KCDC advocacy to change the voting age. I'm not speaking on the merits of changing the voting age, but on the process and the mandate you as councillors have to represent your community. Just over 2 weeks ago, you couldn't cancel the Gateway project because you didn't have information or recommendations from council staff. Today, you're being asked for KCDC to lobby Parliament for changes to not only how councillors will be re-elected at the next election, but also how our MPs will be elected. I don't recall KCDC having led any consultation on this matter, nor do I believe you'll be receiving any staff reports or recommendations. So what makes for sound governance for Gateway should also apply to all your decisions. With no consultation or staff recommendations, on what mandate would you speak on behalf of the community for such a major constitutional change? Now, I accept local body turnout is a challenge. Look, if more people had turned out, I might be sitting where you are, but hey, that's life. LGNZ, of which KCDC is a member, has proposed to government to do a consolidated review that will address all the challenges with local engagement and turnout. Changing the voting age is just one of those elements. For KCDC to unilaterally focus on just one element detracts from that discussion, a genuine korero. Instead, the motion does appear to be a headline-grabbing knee-jerk reaction to the Supreme Court's findings. Any individual obviously has the right to lobby select committees, but do you have the right to lobby on behalf of people you have not consulted? In particular, do you have any mandate to lobby on behalf of us on how MPs are elected? You don't. I therefore ask that the motion is withdrawn, at least until councillors are on full public consultation with staff recommendations on this important subject. If you must be seen to support the changes, then just as with Gateway, the move be suspended for 9 months while you work with LGNZ to make fully considered comprehensive recommendations on local elections. Accountability and responsibility to the community were ideals I often heard during the election. Here's your chance to show your mettle on our district's priorities, not engage in ratepayer-funded lobbying of government for unconsulted constitutional change on how our MPs may be elected. You do not have that duty, you do not have that right. Thank you for your time. I'm very happy to answer your questions.
Thank you for a well-considered submission, Mr. Young. Do I have any questions? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Richard, for your submission. Have you read the Supreme Court ruling?
I have summaries of it.
I think the point you're making, Supreme Court ruling point 22 states it is an intensely and quintessentially political issue involving the democratic process itself, on which there are a range of reasonable views. So you're saying that we haven't, on a constitutional issue, are you saying that we haven't done due diligence with the community? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not aware of any community consultation on this matter led by council. I may be wrong, so I'm sure I'll be corrected if I am. And based on previous precedents, yeah, you're very keen on having recommendations and having communication and consultation before you make your decisions. So if I've missed something, just tell me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. Oh,
Sorry,
Councillor Halliday.
Push my button. Settle. Through you, Madam Chair. Look, a question, Richard. In regards to your point of view, do you think it's not unreasonable for this table not to be restricted by the views of a community group, if you like, with regards to decisions that we make with regards to how we would like to respond to a project?
Can I might just ask for clarification? This in relation to Wellsong or to Councillor Hamper's motion?
It's in relation to Wellsong. You made a
Oh,
point
okay,
that
sorry.
I think it was in the motion that I've put forward with regards to the funding aspect of things.
Look, my motion, my comment on that was mainly a administrative drafting one, is that what's drafted is at odds with what is on the Wellsong website. Wellsong website makes it very clear in red, no ratepayer funding shall be used. Your wording actually opens a gateway to potential funding.
Correct.
And I don't believe that's what was being asked for on the website. Having said that, the last closing statements appear to be opening a door. So that's obviously for you as councillors to consider.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today, Mr. Young.
Thank you, Worship.
Now we have Caden Tippler, and I believe Caden's online, so we'll cross to Zoom room now. Welcome, Caden.
Kia ora, thank you for having me. So obviously, kia ora koutou, ko Caden Tippler tōku ingoa. I'm 17 years old and I'm the co-director of the Make It 16 campaign. And I just thought I would briefly go through some of the reasons why we believe the voting age should be lowered to 16, and also speak to the role of local government in making the decision to lower the voting age to 16. I'll try to speak very briefly though to leave plenty of time for questions. But essentially the three key reasons why the voting age should be lowered is that giving 16 and 17-year-olds a vote would mean a stronger democracy where more people's voices can be represented. New Zealand faces huge long-term challenges. The political decisions being made now will affect young people just as much, if not more, than the generations who can currently vote. And also that, as the Supreme Court has outlined, voting is a fundamental human right, and there is insufficient justification to stop 16-year-olds from voting. You know, 16-year-olds can drive, work full-time jobs that they're also paying tax on, so that's currently taxation without representation. But essentially, 16 and 17-year-olds are just as impacted by the decisions local government is making today as any other age group is. 16 and 17-year-olds are using our roads, they're using our parks, and they're using our libraries. Recently, the issues with public transport have been highlighted in the media. 16 and 17-year-olds are huge users of public transport. Young people often rely on public transport, so 16 and 17-year-olds are feeling the impacts of the disruption in public transport acutely. You know, as we've seen throughout New Zealand's history, 16 and 17-year-olds already want to engage in our democracy. We saw this with the 2019 School Strike for Climate protests, but we also saw this all the way back with the Polynesian Panthers. 16 and 17-year-olds are often on the front lines of democratic movements, showing that there is already a widespread appetite for 16 and 17-year-olds to engage within our democracy and within our society. And lots of these issues that have come up in the past, like climate action and education, these are issues that local government is making decisions on. So 16 and 17-year-olds, for that reason, deserve to have their say in local government. And that is why the decision to lower the voting age is relevant on a national level, but it is also especially relevant within the local government sector. And I agree that this is a decision that will require Parliament's voice and decision. It is Parliament's decision to make ultimately. But we know Parliament will be looking to the views of local government, because it is local government who will be implementing the decision on a local government level, considering local government run their own elections. So I think that's why it is important Parliament hears the views of the Kāpiti Coast District Council, because Kāpiti Coast District Council will have a role in implementing that decision. Just to add on that as well, I know the previous speaker sort of implied that this discussion today is unprecedented and is against how our New Zealand democracy runs and has run previously. But we know that that isn't true, and this is not an unprecedented discussion to be having. As far back as 2020, the Christchurch City Council called for the voting age to be lowered to 16. Wellington City Council has implemented it in their youth strategy and has also recently submitted to the Independent Electoral Review calling for a voting age of 16. Porirua passed a similar motion to this, 9-2, only as long ago as only last week. So this is an ongoing discussion that's happening as we speak. But I think it's also especially relevant that we do not have to wait for the Independent Electoral Review to release their draft report before making a decision, because the Future of Local Government Review has already recommended a voting age of 16 in their own draft report, which is, I think, what the Kāpiti Coast District Council should be looking at today. Finally, I know there has been some discussion about the fact that this campaign isn't a popular one, but Make It 16 does not believe that human rights issues should be popularity contests. And the research, the evidence, the moral and ethical reasons all point to the voting age being lowered to 16. And I hope that the council considers that today before making their decision on the motion. You know, the science actually supports our campaign. Psychologists have said 16 and 17-year-olds are more than capable of voting. It's been a successful policy in other countries with similar democracies such as Scotland. And in fact, lowering the voting age has increased voter turnout across all age groups, which is crucial to New Zealand, where our local government turnout is subpar at best. Once again, wanted to thank you for your time today. I think those are the key reasons why we should be lowering the voting age to 16, and I hope the District Council considers the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an excellent submission today, Caden. I have a question from Councillor Coe.
Yes. Thank you, Caden. That was a very erudite explanation of why we should support this motion. But look, I just have a question in terms of how else you could achieve your outcomes. So I think it is really, really important that councils look after the young people within our areas, and in particular things like transport and so on are major issues for young people. So how can councils best meet the needs of that age group without necessarily having to give them the power to vote? How can we achieve those outcomes in other ways? Are there other ways we can do that?
I think that's a really interesting question, and no, I don't think there is a way to meet those outcomes for young people without lowering the voting age. Otherwise, it would have happened already. I think there are processes in existence where young people can engage within our democracy. You know, they can make submissions, they can sign petitions, etc. But often these ways of engaging in our democracy are not accessible. And also, as a general rule, politicians will listen to voters because they want to keep their jobs, and that requires making voters happy. So if 16 and 17-year-olds cannot vote, then they're essentially excluded from that equation. So for that reason, I don't think there is a way to properly engage young people in our democracy without lowering the voting age.
Thank you, Kate. And I'm sure nobody around this table has ever made a decision thinking about whether they're going to be re-elected or not. Councillor Halliday.
My question was going to be a bit rhetorical now, because it was very eloquently answered just then. I was going to ask that you noted, Caden, in your email to us, they deserve to have their say on buses they take, libraries, roads and parks. And my view was, well, we actually have submission processes, annual plan process and long-term plan process that can be fed into with regards to that. But you've already answered that, so I'm going to leave that one, and thank you very much.
Asked and answered. Councillor Cooper.
Okay, I just have a couple of questions. The Make It 16 campaign, what type of group are you, entity? Are you a lobby group or an activist group? How do you see yourselves?
So I think we see ourselves as an activist group. We're technically like an incorporated society for the purposes of our court case. But I think we see ourselves as an activist group, yeah.
Okay, thank you. You'd accept this as a highly political issue with Labor PM Ardern coming out saying that she is bringing legislation for the Parliament, supported by Greens, not supported by ACT or National through local media. So this is now a tribal politics issue. So if you're an activist group, you are essentially asking this council to take a particular side in that fight. Is that correct?
don't think that's necessarily true. We do consider ourselves a non-partisan campaign, so we don't have any particular political ties in either direction. This isn't official policy for the Labour government. It just so happens that lots of individual Labour MPs support lowering the voting age, but David Seymour from the ACT Party has also commented that he doesn't think lowering the voting age for local elections specifically would be the end of the world, and that would be a policy that he would tolerate. So I don't think this is an exclusively left or right issue. But although, yes, I agree that lowering the voting age is a political action, I also think not lowering the voting age is also a political action, and because it's a human rights violation. So I'm essentially asking this council to decide whether or not this is a human rights violation they can accept when the courts have said that a voting age of 18 is not justified.
I'd ask elected members to keep to questions and not embed statements within their questions. Thank you.
Just a couple more. Thanks, Caden. So what is your membership?
So would you mind rephrasing the question? I'm not quite sure what you mean, like how many of us are there?
Yeah, so your Make It 16 campaign, what is your actual membership?
So we don't have an official count of our membership. There's a few dozen of us located across the country, and we have a looser group who come to events and support us from within their schools as well.
Okay. So I have a 16-year-old at a local college who has friends in another college, and they've said they've had no engagement whatsoever around the question of Make It 16. So are you in the colleges, have you been into the local colleges in our district and had feedback or sought feedback from our 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds?
Look, I mean, it would be impossible for us to reach every school. We have had lots of positive support from 16 and 17-year-olds. I will admit not every 16 and 17-year-old will want to vote, but that's completely okay because not every person in every age group who can currently vote will turn out to vote. I mean, we saw that with the low turnout in local elections for those age groups who can currently vote. So I don't think we should lower the voting age because every 16 and 17-year-old wants to vote, but that's okay because we don't have mandatory voting. It'll just give the opportunity for those who want to vote to have the opportunity to vote. But no, we have definitely not been in every college in New Zealand. I think that would be impossible considering this isn't our full-time job. I'm in high school, so I would not be able to get into every college in the country, but we have been engaging with colleges in Tāmaki Makaurau where I live, and there's definitely widespread support for the campaign here.
Okay, just one last question.
I think I'll move on now, actually. Because
I just got one.
Just a very quick one, please.
Yes, quickly. So the question for our council today is about our community. So I'm hearing from you that in our community, our colleges, Make It 16 hasn't engaged with our community and our colleges.
Look, I don't know if we don't really keep a tally of what colleges we've been into, but I know there's support for Make It 16 from students in Wellington. I can guarantee that there will be 16 and 17-year-olds within your college who want to vote or will take up the opportunity to vote if they're given the chance to.
Awesome, thank you. And you're doing a wonderful job for youth, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks for that, Caden. Superb. You're a really good advertisement for why young people should vote on it. Given constituencies where this has happened, like Scotland, Wales, there's a few, I'm not on board with all of the data. So is there much data to show and what the percentage of voting is for 16 to 18-year-olds where it's been reduced to that age?
Yeah, so there is some data from Scotland, and I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but what I do remember is that there was evidence showing that 16 and 17-year-olds turn out to vote in higher rates than 18 to 24-year-olds, especially in local elections, and I think that partly speaks to the fact that 16 and 17-year-olds are a lot more engaged in their local communities than 18 to 24-year-olds.
Cool. Yep, good job.
Councillor Hanford.
So, yeah, kia ora, Caden. Thank you so much for joining us on Zoom this morning and, yeah, for your very clear and articulate kōrero. Just a question, as a 17-year-old, how does it make you feel that you can't vote? And knowing that you're doing all of this mahi and are involved in various campaigns and yet don't have that opportunity yourself right now to vote?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, I'm obviously incredibly frustrated, and that's why I'm part of this campaign. And I'm incredibly saddened as well, because we're a country where so much of our activism comes from young people, and it feels like young people are being ignored by our politicians, especially today when young people have been so impacted by issues such as climate change and the recent COVID-19 pandemic. Lots of young people have had to grow up very quickly, drop out of high school and work full-time jobs. And on a personal level, I too have felt the impacts of the pandemic, and I too have felt the impacts of being ignored by politicians as a young queer person. So the fact that I can't vote is not just frustrating, but heartbreaking sometimes, when I know as much and my friends know as much about policy as anyone who can currently vote. But it currently feels like politicians are working against our interests when they should be doing the opposite.
Kia ora, I do have a couple of questions, but there are heaps of others, so I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanford. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair, just one question. Caden, as it is I'm assuming this is a constitutional decision, would I assume that the government will have either a referendum or a substantial consultation process around this before it's being enacted?
Yeah, I mean, that will be up to the government and to Parliament. To lower the voting age for general elections, it does require a 75% supermajority, but to lower the voting age for local elections, it only requires a 51% majority. So you know, this is a policy that could happen in time for 2025, essentially. The government's already consulting about lowering the voting age. I think that's the point of the local government review panel, which has recommended a voting age of 16. Make It 16 personally as a group doesn't support a referendum, because as I referenced earlier, you know, human rights issues should not be popularity contests, and the majority should not be deciding the rights of the minority. I think if all our decisions on who can vote were made by referendums, we might not have had a voting age of 18, a voting age of 20, or women might not have even gotten the right to vote. So, you know, I definitely think rather than there being a referendum, we should look at the evidence and the reasons for why we should lower the voting age.
Thank you very much. Great answer.
Yeah, I agree. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. Appreciate you coming along today and giving a very passionate view of why the voting age should be lowered. And I certainly hear the frustration that you have provided today. But I suppose what I'm wanting to ask is, it seems, so I suppose the point that you're speaking us today is we have a motion before us to make a decision on. And as has been mentioned before, we've had very limited information about this. But one of the things too that I think is really important to clarify is, do you or do you not have the mandate of all 16 and 17-year-olds in the country to, I suppose, to promote the voting age to be lowered?
I think that question is irrelevant, because not every woman wanted the right to vote. And currently, not every person who has the right to vote chooses to exercise their right to vote. So I don't think it would be fair or justifiable to say that we can't lower the voting age until every 16 and 17-year-old says they want to vote. Make It 16 is representing the 16 and 17-year-olds who want to vote. And I know that is a reasonable group of us, and so that is who we're representing today. And I don't think the 16 and 17-year-olds who don't want to vote should stop those who want to vote from having that chance. Lowering the voting age won't have any material impact on those who don't want to vote. They can just continue carrying on living their lives as normal, like many people over the age of 18, but it will change the lives, and it'll give a really unique opportunity for the 16 and 17-year-olds who want to vote. So no, we're not representing every 16 and 17-year-old, but I don't think that should matter when making your decision.
Okay, thank you. So my other question relates probably to the youth justice system, where that incorporates 16 and 17-year-olds, and looking on the website, it refers to, I suppose, to children's rights and to young people. And I suppose the reason you've got that youth justice system is because of, maybe some of the way that young people make decisions, their ability to make good decisions. And so, for example, if the voting age was reduced, do you think that the youth system should be removed and that young people should be, I suppose, considered as adults, which is really what, this is, one of the things that, should possibly be considered?
It's maybe a little bit out of scope, but feel free to answer it if you want to, Kayla.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely speak to this a little bit. And I don't think there's one age where suddenly you get all the rights and responsibilities of an adult. You can be held criminally responsible from the age of 10 in some cases. And also you can't gamble until you're 20 in some cases. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach to everything within our democracy and justice system. I think the general consensus from experts and from academics and psychologists is that the kind of thinking needed to be able to vote and the kind of thinking we see when young people or adolescents commit a crime are two different parts of the brain which is activated. And 16 and 17-year-olds are capable of voting, but that doesn't mean we need to change the justice system as well if we give 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote. Look, I do think it's a complicated question, but the two don't necessarily have to be linked. Otherwise, if we're basing it on the justice system, there could be an argument for 10-year-olds voting. So if we just want to look at the evidence, then it makes sense for 16 and 17-year-olds to be able to vote and the justice system to be a separate issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caden. That was an excellent answer. I'm just curious, before we finish, are there other countries that have done this?
Yeah, so I think the discussion around lowering the voting age to 16 is ongoing. Austria's had a voting age of 16 since 2007. So this has been going on for a while. As I mentioned, Scotland and Wales have a voting age of 16. Brazil and Argentina are two other countries with large democracies that have a voting age of 16. And Germany is in the process of lowering their voting age to 16 for EU elections at the moment.
Thank you. I was aware that there would be some countries, but that's a useful bit of information and a bit more detailed than some of us would have been aware of. Thank you so much, Caden. That was a really interesting discussion and very informed and full answers to all of the questions that councillors have had for you today. So thank you very much for popping in on Zoom and having a kōrero with us. And we'll be considering this later in the agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Have a great day. So next we have Lindy McIntyre, Prue Hyman and Finn Caldwell, Aotearoa Living Wage Movement.
Ena mihi, ena mana, ena reo, ena iwi, ena rau, rangatira mā ko Lindy McIntyre ahau, ki pai kakariki e noho ana. I'm Lindy McIntyre and it's great to be here today. I'm here with Prue Hyman. Fantastic to see that last presentation. We represent more the older section of this community. And we have, we're two locals, and we have with us Finn Caldwell, who's the Wellington Regional Coordinator of the Living Wage Movement. I'm a former Kāpiti Coast District Councillor, but it's great to see new faces around the table, because we don't want too many of us hanging around for too long. But since 2011, I've been very deeply involved in the Living Wage Movement or the Living Wage Campaign. and I used to hold the role that Finn has now. I was very active around the accreditation with Wellington City Council in particular, but also with Hutt City Council and with Pororua City Council. So we're here today, and Prue's also been active in those campaigns and in those accreditation processes. So we're kind of here today to say good on you. It's really great to see. I know that there are different faces around the table now, but it was great to see the motion that went up on the 25th of August, and it's great to see another paper before you today. And we're here to say, look, get on with it. Our neighbours have done this and shown how it can be done very easily, and it makes a difference in communities. It makes a difference for councils because it's something you can be proud of. And it's interesting to note that this isn't a sort of political thing, just as Caden was saying, this is certainly not a left or right thing. The mayors that we've worked with across the Wellington region have ranged from Celia Wade-Brown to Andy Foster, and from Campbell Barry to Anita Baker. All leaders in their communities who are really proud that they've been able to become fully accredited living wage councils. So it's time to get cracking on this, and the best way to do that is to make a start. Look at your contracts, but looking at the resolution that's up before you today, look closely at the direct contracts, people like the cleaners, people who are part of our workforce. We live in this community, they're our workers. We're here to say to you today, there's strong support in this community, a community I've lived in for 30 years as a ratepayer and Prue for much longer. We know there's support here for our council valuing their workforce and demonstrating that value by paying them the living wage. And local businesses here, like Common Sense Organics, who employ some quite young members of our community, like Kāpiti Nature Tours and Antonio's Restaurant and Bar in Otaki, they are accredited living wage employers. So they've done the right thing. They've taken a lead. They know that's good for their business and it's good for the community and it's good for those workers. So lastly, I'm kind of semi-retired now, like Prue, and I've been writing a book for the past 2.5 years documenting the story of the living wage movement in New Zealand. I'm hoping to be publishing next year, and I certainly want to be able to say, my community, this where I live, we're up there too. We're standing alongside our neighbouring communities, and we value our workers here in Kāpiti, and we're paying them the living wage. So Prue's just going to say a couple of words as an economist, and then we'll open for questions.
Yeah, I'm Prue Hyman. I'm retired Associate Professor of Economics and Gender and Women's Studies at Vic. I'm an economist who fervently believes in the living wage. Some economists are more doubtful. Think there's a wage employment trade-off, all those simple things that aren't valid at all. In fact, if you pay the living wage, you get reduced turnover, reduced absenteeism, improved morale. You get a workforce that really believes in the people that employ them, who aren't doing it just because they've got to. It pays for itself 10 times over. There is good evidence of this. The London living wage campaign does a great deal of work on even Boris supported the living wage campaign, and it absolutely does pay for itself. Now, your resolution, which is perfectly okay to support Part A of the table, but the real urgent thing is to do the big contracts. one shouldn't be held up by the small bits and pieces ones that are outside accreditation. So one needs to get on and support those cleaners and security guards. I don't know who exactly the contracts are. I would have thought that probably it would be a fairly simple exercise for the larger contracts that you have. And they are also overrepresented in Māori, Pacific and women, who are the lowest paid in our society, who spend all that they earn, and it makes a huge difference to them. And of course, they will be spending it in the local economy, and they will be working in the local economy. So the local economy will benefit. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for that perspective, Prue. Do I have any questions?
Yep.
So I've just been informed that Rachel from KYS needs to leave by 11. So sorry you've had to wait so long, Rachel. So if we could keep our questions really quick on this one, and I'm going to limit it to 2 per person, if that's all right. Thank you.
Oh, looks like it's me. Thank you for the submission. Seems that some of the arguments that people raise against the living wage are similar to the arguments they raise against minimum wage, and most of those seem to have been largely discredited. One of the arguments that does come up, though, is that what happens when the minimum, as the minimum wage rises, hopefully, that then presumably the living wage rises as a consequence. So the bit that seems to cause some people trepidation is the potential for the living wage to become too high. And if you are, this is my own personal view, but I personally think there should be a maximum wage.
Wrap up your question, please, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, so the question is, I'm not going to ask you if you think there should be a maximum wage, but so the question is, how do you deal with that argument that says that it will just become too large, and if you're already accredited and the level goes up and you can't reach that, then do you lose your accreditation?
So there's a quick answer to that question, Nigel. First of all, the living wage is not calculated in relation to the minimum wage. The minimum wage is set by governments, by their political persuasion, just by, off the top of their heads. There's no research, there's no sort of rationale that we get with minimum wage rises. They just sort of happen. Well, except Treasury advice.
Treasury advice,
thanks, economist.
It's not a very thorough process. The changing of the minimum wage, it's largely political, whereas the living wage is very carefully calculated by Charles Waldegrave and Peter King in a very good social science framework. And so, in actual fact, the gap between the two has fallen somewhat lately because the minimum wage has gone up quite substantially. So there's no reason for it to go up, except, of course, inflation will put it up. But if you are accredited, you do have to keep going to that amount. But frankly, it hasn't. Its increase lately has not met even the rate of inflation.
Councillor Warwick.
Oh, just a quick question. With the cost of living and a recession and all, cost of living basically going up so much, is this going to spiral out of control, the living wage, like unaffordable for employers?
Well, the living wage is set on the average movement of wages because it's a wage, and so it moves every year by the percentage that wages have moved in the market. And every 5 years, there's a substantive review of the costs for the costs that are needed to provide, the pay that's needed to provide workers and their families with a wage that enables them to live in dignity. But thinking back over, you're getting ahead of yourself in a way. It's good to have these discussions, but the important thing is to is to go to the living wage, become accredited. Actually, unfortunately, it's not compulsory. It's not, go to jail and you can't ever get out. I mean, you can actually abandon accreditation, but interestingly, no councils have, because and central government has also adopted the living wage for all their directly employed workers in the core public service, and increasingly for the contracted workers. So people, once organisations and institutions adopt the living wage, as Prue said earlier, they find that it actually really works for them, and the benefits far outweigh the costs. So thinking ahead to how this could go up in the future, it's actually quite irrelevant, because unlike the minimum wage, it's not a statutory wage. It's not something you're locked into for all time, but I certainly hope our council will see it's just the right thing to do and take it up and stay there.
Okay, brief questions, brief answers, please. I'll move on to Sophie. Thank you. Councillor Hanford.
So when Porirua and the Hut got their accreditation, did you see any flow-on effects in terms of other kind of organisations, businesses within their communities seeking accreditation as well? So when the councils took that leadership role, in terms of setting that, did you see that flow into the community in terms of the...
That's a really good question, and actually it's better to give Wellington as the example, because Wellington was accredited in 2019, and there's certainly been a big pickup. And the reason for that has been that Wellington City Council, including under Andy Foster's leadership, have said, hey, we're doing this, we're setting an example, we actually want to be a living wage city. So we want this to be a place where the people that live here, our citizens, actually earn enough to live in dignity and participate in society. And I know that Campbell Barry's and his council's plan is to move to that approach this year. They were next to be accredited in our neighbourhood, and I would imagine Porirua would follow suit. So yes, there is a pickup with employers, but that's something that council can take a lead with.
Councillor Coe.
Just very quickly, one of the things we need to consider is the flow-on effect in terms of the contractors and so on that work with council. And one thing that I don't know who they are yet, but I do know that in Kāpiti, most of our businesses are very small, 5 people or less. What evidence do you have about the impact, of going down the accreditation route on those contractors, and I guess particularly in this environment where, we know the next 12 months is going to be extremely tough for businesses, is there a sort of flow-on negative effect to some of the contractors?
Well, we don't know that take your point that most businesses are small. And interestingly, in the living wage movement, it's been small ethical businesses who led the way. All the early living wage employers to become accredited were a small business who just thought, this is part of being a modern, innovative business. We actually want to do the right thing. So one of those things might be being organic, or having green credentials, and also living wage. But there's no evidence that the contractors that who provide services in an ongoing manner to Kāpiti Coast District Council are small businesses, and so let's cross that bridge when we come to it. But the plan isn't, there should be no disadvantage of contractors whatsoever, because in accreditation in other councils, which includes Dunedin, Christchurch, and Auckland's well underway, there will be a process where council renegotiates those contracts on the basis of the living wage. And those contracts, the reason why there's a cost is because that does mean the cost to council, to me, to Prue, other ratepayers will increase. We're very happy about that. That's because you are renegotiating those contracts on a different basis. And I don't know if you require other standards, like green standards or anything, but that would be a standard that you would be requiring of those contractors.
And the difference between the living wage and the minimum wage, just in case you haven't got it at the front of your mind, is only $2.40 an hour.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Very quickly, probably a question for Prue, and it's a question different than the other ones, is because I've seen this occur locally, is there a possibility that living wage will restrict wage growth? So I know of a company who actually lowered their wages to become a living wage employee and then became accredited. So it restricts I'm a living wage, I don't need to pay $28 because I'm a living wage employer.
I don't know what business you're referring to, but any unethical business that did that would soon lose its valuable workforce.
So I mean like across the rising tide slows and stops at the living wage.
No, there's no evidence of that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you've given an example, but they would be really an outlier.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prue and Lindy, for your time today, and we'll be considering this later in the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel, thank you so much for your patience. I should have moved you up. My apologies.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Rachel tuko ingoa. I'm Rachel Osborne. I lead the team at Kāpiti Youth Support, and we've got with me, I've got Mike Stiles and Jess Smith, who are trustees. Sorry for my pressure. I've got to interview a new doctor at 11 o'clock, and we know how getting new doctors into the community is a high priority. So that's my urgency. First of all, I want to congratulate you, Janet, on your appointment to Mayor and to the rest of the councillors and community board. A most important job leading our community. A warm welcome to you, to the new CEO, Darren, for warm-hearted welcome to you. And I also want to acknowledge the council, the KCDC staff, for the work that they've put into this Memorandum of Understanding. We're really excited. Many of you know lots about Kāpiti Youth Support. We've been delivering health and wellbeing services for young people 10 to 25 for 26 years. We're an internationally awarded organisation, and as I said, many of you are welcome to come and visit KYS, but we're really looking forward to working together with council and on a way forward, working really well. We know that the Kāpiti district is going to grow significantly, and that's going to impact us, and we're a significant organisation in this community that contributes to KCDC's outcomes. So, Mike?
Kia ora, thanks, Rachel. Yes, the progress of this Memorandum of Understanding has been a little bit like an elephant's pregnancy. It's gone on for at least 20 months. And of course, it's further complicated by the fact that in the middle of it, there was a change of council. Be fair to say that the last council members that we spoke to were philosophically very much in favour of this. And I do want to thank the council members that have the council staff that have worked on this. As Rachel has said, we are very well known both nationally and internationally as a provider of very, very best service. We think it's in your interests and ours for there to be a Memorandum of Understanding that guides our way forward. There have been some instances in the past, and I don't want to plough old paddocks, but there have been some instances in the past where we haven't quite felt the love. We're all about love at Kāpiti Youth Support, and we'd like to think that a Memorandum of Understanding would ensure that neither organisation accidentally or otherwise disadvantage the other in your processes and things. We're not calling for any money, by the way. There was a talk before about 5 million. We'd love 5 million if we had going for spare, but we're not about that. We just wanted to make sure that we work together in unison to the benefit of young people here on the Kāpiti Coast. So thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you, and Jess, welcome. Can I keep questions to questions about the Memorandum of Understanding itself? Because once we have the Memorandum of Understanding, we will be having those regular, well, yearly, I think, meetings with the councillors and KYS, which is going to be fantastic. So we'll be able to be kept up to date with the organisation. So I'll take questions about the Memorandum of Understanding, and please keep them brief. Thank you. Councillor Coe.
Yes, look, Rachel, I'm a big fan of KYS, as you know. Just interested to know, and I should say we're very lucky to have you, but interested to know what difference this MOU will make to you, and to explore Mike's comment that sometimes you haven't felt the love. So what are the key benefits that would flow to KYS from having an MOU?
I think that we are we want to look forward. We want to work together in partnership. We move in the area of health. We are now taking over the Alternative Education Centre, so we're moving into education. We're also in housing and an approved transitional housing provider. So we're moving in areas where council are also working in areas. So I think that it's really important that we work together and that we understand each other's positions so that we can together get a greater benefit for the young people of this community.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Jess, Rachel, Mike. Superb work. Relating to this, is there anything in this MOU, is there anything not in here that you think should be? And is there anything in here that you think shouldn't be?
No, I think it's been backwards and forwards a lot throughout the pregnancy, but I think it's really good. I think there's a lot of change afoot, and I think that with health reforms and health changes, and I think it's just about the council understanding our position really well, and I think there's a commitment to do that on both sides. So no, I think it's really robust.
Yeah, really good to hear that it's been a collaborative effort to come up with something that we're both happy with. Councillor Pravanov.
Through you, Madam Chair. So I see that KYS receives 2 types of social investment funding. I'm just wondering what those amounts are and whether you
Could I keep to questions just about the Memorandum of Understanding?
This is the paper that actually supports it.
Okay.
I think we receive $50,000 from counselling per annum, and we also receive,
what I might do, Rachel, is I'll get council staff to provide that information for Councillor Pravanov, rather than you having to answer that on the hoof. Yeah,
thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation today. Good luck with the new doctor, and I'm very happy to welcome a baby elephant rather than being criticised for a white elephant. So thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you soon. So I think we'll just get up to the updates, and then we'll take just a short comfort break. So we have item 5, members' business. Sorry, item 8, members' business. Leaves of absence. I'll encourage any leaves of absence to be communicated to the Mayor, please. Matters of an urgent nature. I haven't been advised of any. There hasn't been a Mayor's report circulated in advance, so we'll see that at the next meeting. And that moves us on to item 10, which is updates. We'll just take a 5-minute break, please. Very quick comfort stop, because we want to get through this agenda today. Could we please be back at 11 o'clock?